Tov, my friend. Today's Daf Yomi is Gittin Daf Zayin, Gittin 7. We're going to start on Vavam Abay's 2 lines from the bottom. So the Gemara is talking about the fact that the incident of the Pilegesh Begiva happened because a husband was too hard on his wife. Too much fear inspired in the household. So says Rabba Babarchana, Hada Amri Rabbanan, Shlosha Dvarim Tzarach Adam Omar B'Sach Beso Erev Shabbos Im Chashecha. Those three things which a person is supposed to say in their household on the eve of Shabbos as it's getting dark. What are the three things? What's in there? Did you take the type from the food? Did you make an Erev to be able to walk or carry? Did you light the Shabbos candles? You have to say them on top of Zayin and Aleph. You have to say them in Nachas. You have to say them softly. You have to say them with a smile. So that the words be accepted. If you come at it too harsh, it's not going to be accepted. And Rav Ashi says, listen, I didn't actually hear this, but I knew it on my own. It's common sense that if you want people to really do something properly, the way to do it is with a smile rather than trying to scare them straight. A person, says a person should not put too much fear into his household. There was once Adam Gadol, a great man, and he put too much fear into his household. And as a consequence, they fed him something, davar gadol, literally a great thing, a great sin. Who is this person? So the Gemara says, "Hey, they actually fed him something not kosher." The animals of the righteous, God doesn't even allow to sin. And this is the story of Pinchas ben Yair's donkey in Chul and Zayin and Aleph, where the donkey refused to eat the food, and then they checked the food, and their meiser had been taken from it. So tzaddikim ha'atzmam l'kolshkim, for sure, Hashem wouldn't allow the tzaddik himself, or Chanina ben Gamliel, to actually eat the davar gadol. So what was it? So the Gemara says, Ela bikshu la'achilo davar gadol. They tried to feed him something non-kosher, which was the Ever Menachai that he had. That Rashi says that they lost the animal, parts of the animal after they slaughtered it, and they were worried that their boss was going to get upset at them, and so they ripped off the limb of an animal which was alive and they tried to replace it. But they tried to do it, but it didn't actually happen. Ever Menachai is called a davar gadol because this is the only type of food that's prohibited for every human being to eat, a limb that was ripped from a living animal. So why are we saying this story? Because we've been discussing that if you want to quote psukim, you have to first make a line on the parchment. It's called sear to it. So Marukva said to Rabbi Elazar, those people who are standing against me and have the ability to hand them over to the government and get them punished, what should I do? So Sirtate Vikasava, he made lines in the document, he wrote back to him, Amarti Eshmera Dirachai Mechato, Bil Shoni, Eshmera Lafi Machsom. So he said that the pasuk says, Amarti Eshmera Dirachai Mechato Bil Shoni. I said I'm going to guard myself from sinning with my tongue. Eshmera, I'll guard my mouth by muzzling it. Bode Rasha Negdi, when there's a wicked person against me. Which means Alpha Pisha Rasha and Negni, even though the wicked person is against me, Eshmerala Pimatsum, I'll put a muzzle in my mouth. Meaning to say, don't do it. So Shalchai Kamitzarli Tuva Goma Tzino de Ekambo. So he says, they're really harassing me and I can't withstand it. So he responds, Shalchai Dom Hashem this Bolelo, be silent to God, and literally like yearn for him. But what does it really mean? Dom Hashem if you're silent, God will strike them down. So what should you do? Get up early and go to the base medrash. Go study in the base medrash. Meaning to say, study Torah morning and night, and that'll take care of your enemies. And the Tosfos says that waking up morning and the night is hinted to in the verse dome, because it's from the expression of dimdume chama, like the rays of the sun, meaning when the sun is red, i.e. when the sun rises. So therefore, that's the approach, meaning to say, wake up early and study in the base measures. That's the way to defeat your enemies. So the Gemara, Vehain Kohen Me'alin, and then if you do this, your enemies will disappear on their own. And indeed, Hadavar Yitzah Mipi Rebbe Elazar, the matter went out from Rebbe Elazar. V'nasanu l'gneva b'kolar, and then this person who was harassing Mar Ukva, whose name was Geneva, they stuck him in the prison or in the iron chains. So therefore, we see from here that the best response to somebody who's attacking you is to study, immerse yourself in the Torah early at night. Hashkem v'arev bebeis hamedrash. Shalchu elu Mar Ukva. So then they sent him another message to Mar Ukva, because we're on a tangent stream of consciousness here. Zimra Manolan to Asir. How do we know that music is prohibited? We just learned this in Gemara and Sota 2 weeks ago, and so now we're back to it. How do we know that music is prohibited? So Sir Tate, he drew the lines on the Torah, on the parchment, because of Wahu. Al Tismach Yisrael El Gil Ba'amim. Do not rejoice amongst the nations. Proves that the music is prohibited. Why doesn't it say this verse? B'shir lo yishtu yayin, yemar shechar lo shotav. When you're singing, don't drink wine, and when the beer will be bitter for those who drink it. Meaning, say after the temple was destroyed, you're not allowed to play music. So the Gemara says, I might have thought the music of the instruments is prohibited. Of the puma shari, but I might have thought the a cappella, just singing, is permitted, and so therefore kamashwan it's not. Tosfos says that even though music is prohibited, if it's for a mitzvah, it's going to be permitted, like a chuppah, like a wedding. What Rafuna says, Barnasan says to Rav Ashi, what do we do with the fact that the verse says in Joshua, why does it list the cities of Judah, Kina, V'dimona, V'ad Ada? Amalei Masvata de Eretz Yisrael. He says, oh, those are cities in Eretz Yisrael, Kochashiv. That's what they're counting, just the cities. Amalei, so Rafuna Barnasan says, Atu Analei Adana de Masvata de Eretz Yisrael, Kochashiv. I know that. Ella, but what's the significance? How do you darshan it? So he explains that Kol Sheyeshlo Kina Al Chavero. So he says that we have to, his verses are darshan mashmauti, as we say. Anybody who has jealousy of his friend, vidomim, where he has anger against his friend and he's silent, shochein adayad adada, the one who dwells above, i.e. God, utzalodin, will make the judgment for him. So then Ravuna Barnasan or Rav Ashi says, El Me'ata, well, what are you going to do with the phrase? Tziklag umidamna visan sena. Hachinami, what do you do with that? Kindashan, Amrulay, Yavi Rav Gavia, Mibeargiza Acha. So Rafuna Barnasan says back to Rav Ashi, well, if Rav Gavia from Be'er Giza was here, Hava Amar Taima, he would be able to explain the reasoning. But Rav Achim Ben Chuzah was there. Amar Ba'ach, he explained, Kol mi sheyesho tzakas legima al chavero, anybody who has a claim, meaning to say, anybody who has a claim against his friend, that he has claims against his friend that his friend is stealing from him. That's called tza'akat ligima. Siklag is tza'akat ligima vidomim, and he's quiet. Then the son Sena, i.e. God, who is shochein basneh, who dwells in the burning bush, O Selodin, will bring him justice. So then the Reish Galusa said to Rafuna, because since we're discussing what happens after the Churban, and also in Sota they had the same type of discussion. So he says, so the Reish Galusa says to Rafuna, Kalila, the Minol and the Usr, this crown that they used to make for the grooms, it's like golden or silver crowns. How do we know that after the temple was destroyed, it's prohibited? Amar midrabanan. So Rav Huna responds to Reish Galusa, it's not biblically prohibited. I'm not going to cite you a verse. It's rabbinically prohibited. And this is based upon a mission. It's not Puma Shalaspainius, that during the War of Vespasian, Gazrul Ataros Chasanim, they made a prohibition on these crowns, Vala Eros, and the Eros was, we learned this in Masechah Sota, it was like a tambourine. It was that had like a skin and had a bell that used to bang against the skin and make noise. So therefore, those things were prohibited, but it's not based upon a verse. In the meantime, Rav Huna got up. He had to go to the bathroom. So Rav Chisda said, I'll tell you actually, Rav Chisda said, Karaksiv. Rav Chisda says, I have a pasuk for you. It says, Ko amar Hashem Elokim, Hasera mitznefes, Reima Tara, Zos lo Zos. So the pasuk is telling us, remove your crown, remove your turban, and remove your crown. Zot lo Zos. Hashbala Hagbeya, the one who was low down, lift up, Vagavoa Ishbil, and one who was high up, lower down. So Rav Chisda says, this is the verse, meaning to say, what does the turban have to do with the crown? When the turban was on the head of the Kohen Gadol, Atar Barosh Adam. Then the crown is on the head of every man. Once the turban has been removed, then the crown is removed from every person. So basically, once the temple was destroyed and the Kohen Gadol doesn't wear his mitznefes, then it's not appropriate for you to wear a crown anymore. In the meantime, Rav Huna was Rav Chisda's Rebbe, came back. He found them sitting and he heard what they were saying. Huna says, I swear, midrabanan, it's rabbinic. Ela Chisda shemech, chazdayim milech. Your name is Chisda and your words are chesed. So he said a nice pshat, but it's not the pshat. You said a nice vartal, but it's not the pshat. Ravina ask chayla mar baravashi, David gadol kulila barte. Ravina found Mar Baravashi. So Mar Baravashi is the son of Ravashi. Often the Talmud is attributed to Ravashi that he was the editor, Ravina and Ravashi. So here we see it's the next generation. It's Mar Baravashi. He was weaving a crown for his daughter, Amrle. Several Amar. So now Hamitznefes, Aser Mitznefes. Didn't we say once the turban was removed, you have to get rid of the crown? He says, yeah, it's similar to the Kohen Gadol, so that only applies to men, but it doesn't apply to women. Women can wear the crowns at their wedding. What do we do with that part of the verse? This, but not this. When God said to the Jewish people, remove the crown, remove the turban, and remove the crown, the angels said before God, this is the Jewish people, you want to punish them? They came before you at Sinai and they said, before you said to Sinai, they said, Nasa Nishma. They said, we'll do and then we will hear. This is the schus that they have. How can you remove their crowns? So God responded, and we're doing this in the Shloshos Yemei Hagbala, the 3 days of preparation to Har Sinai. I'm talking about the godless of what it was to accept the Torah, but they responded. This was what happened to the Jewish people because they lowered down that which was high, i.e., God, and they raised up that which was low, i.e., the idolatry, and they placed an image in the sanctuary. Darash Rav Avira, Zimnin number one, Mishmei Rabbi Ami was Zimnin number one, Mishmei Rav Asi. Rav Avira expounded Ma'idach Sivko Amar Hashem. He says, what do we do with the pasuk Im Shleimim V'chein Rabim? Even though you're peace and there's many of you, meaning to say, if you don't have a lot of money, that V'chein Rabim, and there's many of you, you'll be cut down and passed. Meaning to say, what does this pasuk mean? This verse from Nachum. If a person sees that his mizonos is very tight, he doesn't have money, he asks the man tzedakah, he should give charity from them. But kol shekain kashem merubin, for sure when there's a lot of money. V'chein nagozu v'avar, what does that mean? Tan debei Rav Shmuel called gozes min achasav. Whoever takes his money and shears it, and gives charity, and needs some medina shel Gehenim, will be saved from Gehenim. Mashal shtei rachelos, it's a parable to two lambs. Shayu ovros b'mayim, they were passing by the water. Achas gezuza v'achas ena gezuza. One of the lambs was shorn of its wool. V'achas ena gezuza. The other one was not shorn. Gezuza avra, the wool that was shorn, passed by, was able to get through the water. Gezuza lo avra. One that was not shorn was not able to pass. So all the possessions weighed it down. And what do we do at the end of that pasuk, where it states, "V'ini sicho anech od." Even the poor man who is getting money from charity has to give charity himself. And that's indeed what the Rambam rules. And the Kesef Mishnah writes that this is the source for that halacha, that even a poor man who gets money from charity has to give charity. How much money does he have to give? The Rambam says he can't give less than 1/3 of a shekel each year. So, and indeed the Shulchan Aruch writes that even a poor man who's support from charity has to give charity. But the Ramah brings in the name of the tour, no, first you have to support yourself before you support anybody else. And so you don't have to give charity until you give parnasa. So the Ramah seems to be contradicting this. So the Aruch HaShulchan writes that our sugya is dealing about the mitzvah of tzedakah of 1/3 of the shekel a year, that a person has to give that amount. But whereas the Ramah is talking about 10% or up to 1/5 that some people give, that person who's poor should not be giving. So fine. Tani Rav Yosef, what Rav Yosef gives it, Tani Rav Yosef that if you give the charity, then you'll never again see the signs of poverty. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda said in our Mishnah, the Rekem or Mizrach, from Rekem to the east, that is and then from Akko to the north, north of Akko, you have to say Fani Nachtam, which means to say, the Akko, it's a Fani there, it's Shalkaim with it. It seems to be, from our Mishnah, pretty clear that Akko is the northernmost point of the land of Israel. Is that really possible? But don't we have a Mishnah in Olos? And here Rashi has a drawing for us. And Rashi's drawing, the Myra of the western part is the top of the map. We usually put the north on the top, but in Rashi's time they put the west on the top. So we say as follows from the Mishnah, if you're walking from Akko to Ksiv, Miyamino and Mizrach, on the right side of Akko, as you're walking, and to the east, Haderach Tameh, we're going to say that land is going to be considered outside the land of Israel, and so therefore the path is Tameh because of Mishum Eretz Alamim, because we're going to assume it's part of outside the land of Israel, and you don't take a tithe there. because it's not Eretz Yisrael, Minas Shvius, and you don't do the sabbatical year until it's clear to you that it is part of the land of Israel. Whereas mismo, but if you're as you're walking, presumably you're walking from south to north. Mismo marav haderach tahara, we're going to assume it's part of the land of Israel, and mishum it's haderach tahara mishum eretz amamim. We're going to say that it's not outside the land of Israel, and the path is pure. B'chayeves b'maiser b'shvius. And you have to give the tithes in the sabbatical year until you secure for certain that it's exempt. And ad ksiv. This is all the way to ksiv. And Rabbi Yishmael bar Rabbi Yossi says in the name of Aviv, ad livlafo. So we see from here that Akko is not the northern point. Either ksiv or livlafo is the northern point of Israel. So why does our Mishnah say Akko is a northern point? So Amar Abaye Ritzua Nafka. That there was a small strip, as you see from the map, that Akko is the northernmost point of the square of the land of Israel. But there was a small strip that came out that went up all the way to Keziv. And that was north of Akko. So the Gemara says, V'yav ta'ana simana hachi. Is the Tana really going to give us one little small strip? He's going to give us that little small strip. Never, it's really going to happen. Why does he have to give us that precise boundary? So the Gemara says, yes, and indeed, Kranami Yav Simana. The pasuk also sometimes gives us such a siman. Now, Siv, as it says in the pasuk in the end of the book of Judges, second day in a row where we have a reference to the Pilegesh Begiva story, it says, Hinei Chag Hashem b'Shilo miyamim yamina, Hashem mitzafon beis el mizracha, Hashemesh Mizracha ha-shemesh l'mesiwa ola mi-beis el shchema u'mi-negev l'levona. And we see from here that in this drawing of Rashi, you see that from Beis El, there was a little mesiwa, there's a little road, and Shem was on the left of it. And so we see from here very clearly, I look at Rashi, V'amar Papa, well, first we read it, V'amar Papa Mizracha shel Mesila, that the east of the Mesila was the Levona and Shiloh. So we see from here that Rashi says, that Shiloh was to the east of the highway. It was north of Beis El. And when it says east of the sun, is referring to the highway. Shiloh was north of Beis El and was east of this highway and south of Levona. And so we see from here the Torah is giving us references to these little strips. Tanachada, we learned in one brisa, the Gemara is going to give us a contradictory brisa that is taking us back to the source of whether or not you have to say Fanei Nachta if you come from Medina Sayam. What about if you bring it in a ship? I heard today a fascinating lecture by this professor from the British Museum in England talking about ships. And his argument was that Noah's Ark was round. He grew up as an Orthodox Jew, but now he's an atheist. His name was Finkel. Very, very interesting lecture. If you want the link, I'll be happy to send it to you. Tana Chada, one brisa tells us, maybe get besvina, if you bring a get on a ship, and if the get was written in the ship, and the Gemara's assumption is that it's being written on the rivers of the land of Israel, can maybe bear its show. It's as though it was written in Israel, and so therefore you don't have to say b'fanei nechtam. But Tanya idach can maybe b'chutz laaretz. The other approach is that it was as though it was written in chutz laaretz because the river is not considered like the dry land, and so therefore it's like chutz laaretz, and you have to say b'fanei nechtam. So how do we deal with these contradictory prices? Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah lokash Rabbi Yehuda Rabbanan. One represents the position of Rabbi Yehuda, the other represents the position of the Rabbanan. The Tanan, because we learned in the Mishnah in Chawa, Afar Chutz Laaretz, Haba B'Sfina. Let's say you have earth from Chutz Laaretz, which is in the ship, and it's coming to the land of Israel. And Rashi says, and you planted it on the ship, and it started to grow. But the Sfina, the ship, which is made out of pottery, and so therefore, because it's made out of pottery, Rashi says you don't need, or it's made out of clay, you don't need to make a hole in it. If it was on the ground, it's considered like the earth is in the land of Israel. So then you're going to say it has to bring a tithe. And as the law of Israel, it's like sabbatical year fruit. And Aram Yehuda Yehuda says that's only when the ship is actually on the ground, meaning to say it's dragging along the mud. But if it's not, it's going to be potter. So you're going to see. So basically, the source that says that the river is like the land of Israel, and you don't have to say Fanei Nelcham, that's like the Chachamim. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda says it's only it if it's on the ground. So and therefore you don't have to say then you would have to say Fanei Nelcham because you're not in the land of Israel. So the Gemara says, Abai Amar Hava Rabbi Yehuda. No, we could say that both position that says it's like Israel and position not is both like Rabbi Yehuda. It depends whether or not the ship is on the ground. If the ship's on the ground, it's like you're in Israel. If the ship's not on the ground, then it's like you're outside of Israel. So that's what Abai says. Amar Rabbi Zera. So then Rabbi Zera introduces us to a new idea. He said, or a related topic. Let's say you have a flower pot which has a hole in it, and it's on stakes. That's the machokas according to Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan. Rashi explains, according to Rabbanan, the airspace avira, if it's in the air, it's like it's still on the ground, and therefore if you're in the river and you're in the air, then it's like you're actually on the ground, then you're in Israel, and you don't have to say Fanei Nelcham. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's only if you're touching the ground that you're in Israel. And so therefore, if it's in a flower pot and it's on stakes, so it's not on the ground, then we're going to say you're not going to be liable in Meiser, biblically speaking, until it's actually on the ground. So that's what Rabbi Zera says. So Amar Rabba Del Maloli, Rabbi says maybe that's not the case. I'd kind of come Rabbi Yehuda awesome. Why does Rabbi Yehuda say his halacha by the ship? He only says it al b'sfina. He says it by a ship. He only says it by the ship. That unless it's on the ground, it's not going to be considered like it's on the ground. Only by a ship. Because the ship is made to be moving. But the flower pot. And so therefore, since the ship moves, he says it either has to be on the ground or it's not like in Israel. But the flower pot, the flower pot doesn't move. Maybe he wouldn't say it. Maybe it'd say it's always on the ground. Or Inami, I'd kind of come here Rabbanan Hasam. Maybe the Rabbanan say that the ship is considered in the land of Israel, Besfina, to a Mavsik Avira, because there's no air actually in between. It's just water. And the Avsik Avira Demaya and Demaya Kiara, and the water is like the land. And so therefore, Kiaras Michasa Demaya, because we're going to say the land is basically going to be considered like it's attached to the ground. The water attaches the ship to the ground. It's the mafsik avira, well, but the flower pot which interrupts the air, then the chachamim would say then it's not like you're on the ground. So therefore, we can go either way with this machokas. So we'll stop the recording here, and God willing, prepare for Har Sinai. 3 days till Har Sinai.